Just a reminder that the meeting will be recorded and available to view on the Council's website. Could I ask IT colleagues to start recording? Cheers, Rob. Okay, Lynn, over to you for the sediment and apologies.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. If you hear your name, can you confirm your attendance, please? Councillor Reid?
Here.
Councillor McMahon?
Here, Lynn, thanks.
Councillor Cowan?
Here.
Councillor Linton?
Present.
Councillor Barton?
Here, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Douglas?
Here, Lynn.
Councillor Ingram?
Here, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Maitland?
Here.
Councillor Maben?
Here, thanks.
Councillor Watt?
Morning, and I'm here.
We have an apology this morning from Councillor Filson. We also have an apology from Dr David Lewis. Reverend Harriet Johnston?
Here, Lynn, thanks.
Babs Mowat?
I'm here, Lynn.
Thank you. And we have an apology from Hazel Malacotti and John Semple. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay, next bit's the usual declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest anyone wants to do? If there's any obvious, no. Okay, we're now going to the main paper, which is East Ayrshire performance paper, and Colin Hastings and Paul Toland will start the paper. Colin, there you are.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning, members. Members, this report is the second East Ayrshire Performance Report of the year, continuing in the updated format that was introduced previously to Cabinet for the Q1 report in September. The report provides members with performance and monitoring information for Q2, as at the 30th of September this year, across the areas of revenue, capital, workforce and digital. I will take you through the detail of the revenue section before colleagues then brief you on the following sections. The report itself has a number of specific asks detailed within the recommendations at paragraph 2, including the allocation of £45,000 worth of funding over 3 years to the Boswell Book Festival, as outlined at paragraphs 18 and 19. To note the financial resilience indicators presented at paragraph 20, providing a health check in the Council's financial sustainability, and that the contract figure for Drawing Primary school roof refurbishment will exceed the accepted tender value by more than 10%, as outlined at paragraph 22 and 23, and note the further reprofiling of capital budgets from 25-26 to future years by £7.5 million, as outlined in paragraphs 24 and 25. To the report itself in the revenue section. Paragraph 5 of the main report indicates that the council-wide overspend position is projected to be £10.525 million. This position includes a net overspend of £500,000 in relation to council tax collection and council tax reduction position, which is managed centrally out with the main service areas. The page on screen details the overall position for all main council services. On the left-hand side, we can see here that at Q2, the overall position is projected as an overspend of £10.025 million. This is a significant increase from the position at Q1 of £8.413 million and is primarily in relation to older people services within the Health and Social Care Partnership. While most other areas are achieving some stability or improved financial positions from Q1, the continuing pressure within the social care service remains. On the right-hand side, we can see that almost £200 million of the total projected expenditure has been spent to date, with the largest portion of that in relation to staffing costs. At the bottom on the right-hand side, we see a breakdown of the overall net variance of £10.025 million, broken down by expenditure category. We can see that the vast majority of the overspend relates to third-party payments, centrally held savings and transport costs, reflecting particularly the areas of pressure within Health and Social Care Partnership and in relation to education transport. So moving on to some more detail within the services, beginning with education. See it. There we go. Beginning with education, we can see that £74.7 million has been spent to date. 52% of the overall anticipated spend, with the vast majority in relation to staffing costs. The service is projecting an overspend position of £985,000 at Q2, an improved position from that noted at Q1 of approximately £1 million. The majority of this improvement relates to an anticipated cost reduction of around £700,000 following the review and initial implementation of the alternative school transport policy. Pressures will, however, remain in relation to this area this year, with pressures also continuing in relation to school absence costs and in relation to probationers. The service is, however, continuing to achieve savings in relation to early years provision, following the implementation of the best value review in this area last year, and this is reflected in the projected underspends on employee costs and third-party costs in the chart at the bottom right-hand corner of the page. Moving on to the remaining services within Chief Executive, a spend today of £13.4 million is noted, with an overall underspend of £1.062 million anticipated at the year end, a slight increase from Q1 of £964,000. That saving is spread across all service areas, being achieved through savings on employee costs, as these service areas progress onwards with service redesigns and as other savings are occurring as a result of additional income recovery. The finance and digital service area is anticipated to underspend by £235,000, with savings in relation to employee costs, partly offset by pressures in relation to income recovery and IT licence requirements. The governance service is anticipated to be £473,000 underspent as a result of projected levels of income recovery for building warrant and planning fees. And people and culture is also anticipated to underspend as a result of the anticipated fee income generated from salary sacrifice schemes. Moving on to communities and economy, a broadly stable position continues for the services as a collective at Q2, having spent £47.3 million to date, but projecting to be broadly online overall, a small underspend anticipated of £177,000. However, individually, pressures continue to be seen within the Ayrshire Roads Alliance and within housing and communities, being supported primarily by savings within central management support, which reflect management actions undertaken as part of Communities and Economy's previous budget recovery plan to maintain collective control of the budget position. The Ayrshire Roads Alliance is anticipated to overspend by £881,000 this year, primarily as a result of the cost of mainstream school transport costs, about £665,000, and roads maintenance contractor costs, as well as lower levels of parking income recovery than previously anticipated. Housing and communities are projected to be £322,000 over budget this year, moving from a previously anticipated underspend of £202,000. At Q1, with pressures within greener communities and cleaner communities resulting in the movement. This position takes account of £2 million of extended producer responsibility funding in the current year to support the implementation of the Waste Management Review, acknowledging also that the model being implemented following review required financial support in initial years before financial benefits would be recognised. Following on now to the position for the health and social care, this remains singularly the largest continuing financial challenge for the Council, as the management of the Health and Social Care Partnership continue to tackle the levels of demand for service provision while implementing previously planned actions to address the pressure. The financial position, while significant, is representative of the challenge being evidenced nationally across all IJBs in relation to the need and cost of social care provision. The Director of the Health and Social Care Partnership has advised that the social care service is anticipated to outturn by £10.279 million over budget, an increased overspend position of £2.4 million higher than previously recognised at Q1. This movement primarily relates to the provision of community care services, which has moved from £5.3 million overspend previously to an £8 million overspend, primarily in relation to older people's services. Savings targets of £2.5 million previously anticipated to achieved have, following discussion with senior health and social care management, been determined as unlikely to be recognised under current plans, with efficiencies made being consumed by the increasing level of demand within the service. Additionally, while pressure continues in relation to the outwith placement budget, an improved position is noted with a reduction in the projected overspend from 921,000 to 581,000, with the number of current placements reducing from 19 to 17, although recognition is made that this can be a very fluid area. Children and Family Services continues to offset some of the pressure elsewhere with a projected underspend of £580,000. To address the position, work is continuing with the IJB to develop the direction to the Council, detailing the recovery plan proposals for future consideration by members, and this is anticipated in the near future. If we move on to the housing revenue account, where we can see that it is anticipated to underspend by 415,000 at Q2, the graphic on the left shows a balanced position overall, recognising that an underspend in relation to the HRA must remain within it for use in supporting tenants in future years. The position has moved since Q1, previously £1.8 million underspent, with the service taking the opportunity to increase the level of planned spend on CFCR and planned maintenance. This has been possible due to the favourable position arising from windfall savings this year on employee costs from the reduction on the employer's superannuation rate at 6.5% this year, which the HRA is able to retain. This can be seen in the top variance in the graphic on the bottom right side of the page. Next is the Leisure Trust page, which continues to anticipate an online position overall at the year end, as was the case at Q1. The graphic on the left-hand side of the page details the £8.65 million management fee that the Council provides the Leisure Trust with the management of services, whilst on the right we can see at the top a breakdown of the service areas that the management fee is spent on, and on the bottom right details some of the variance within each of the areas, both areas of pressure and the countering areas of saving which support these in the current year. If I move on now to central services, these are functional budget areas that are not assigned to individual service areas, as they relate more to the corporate functioning of the Council as a whole. There are two areas of note that I would address here. The first is the position in relation to housing council tax benefit. An overspend of £900,000 continues to be anticipated in relation to council tax reduction support, recognising that the level of entitlement for support to members of a community is in excess of the funding we receive, and that the council must find funding elsewhere to support this. The second relates to the reduced pension contributions for employer superannuation for 25-26. On the right-hand side, we make note that the saving from this remains expected to be £12 million this year, and will, as previously approved, be earmarked to support the Early Intervention and Prevention Fund. It's not shown as an underspend at Q2 within the figures in order to not obscure the Council financial position overall, but has been highlighted for note. Moving to the last page, I would just note the summary table at the end of the revenue section, which provides a cumulative position on all of the main service areas and the Council funding which supports them, recognising the full Council overspend position of £10.525 million. Finally, members, in the main covering report, if I can draw your attention to the financial resilience indicators noted at paragraph 20. These are indicators we report annually following the audit of the accounts to show a snapshot health check of the continuing financial sustainability of the Council, focusing on the availability of resources and the level of Council indebtedness. I would note that while the level of usable and earmarked reserves have increased both in pound and in percentage terms, this is mainly due to the accounting treatment for the Early Intervention and Prevention Fund. I would also note that while our unallocated reserves remain within our minimum reserve policy level of 2%, they are at the lowest they have been in some time at £8.28 million. Additionally, in broad terms, the cost of financing the General Fund and HRA capital programmes is currently at 6p and 19p, respectively, for every pound of related funding received. So that represents the revenue position at Q2 for the Council, and at that point I'll stop there and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Colin. Members, colleagues, any questions? Ian, Barnett? Councillor Linton.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Reid. Douglas. I think the new layout is definitely helping, Colin. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I think, we were bogged down in an absolute mass of statistics when we had the older layout, and I think it draws into sharp focus the council's financial position, and I think you're absolutely right to focus on the IJB. I don't think we're unique in any way in Scotland. I think there's problems in funding the service we'd like to deliver right across Scotland, and it's going to be a nationwide solution, I think, that's required to address that. So, yeah, I approve of the new layout, definitely. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor. And that's again appreciated. That was obviously the work and the sort of kind of recommendations we'd taken on board from yourselves and from other parties, including external audit, about changing East Ayrshire Performs to perhaps a more graphic format that would perhaps focus in on the specific areas that required members' direct attention to draw to that. So it's pleasing to hear that you find that it's working for you. Perhaps some of my shaky IT work aside, but it's good to know that that's working for you. And as I say, it's something that we're looking at. If there are any further improvements or anything that we can change as we go along, that we're happy to look at that as well if that assists.
Councillor Douglas. Barnett.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. And again, just to echo what Councillor Linton has said, I think I really welcome the format now, and it does give that sharp focus on the key areas where I think we need to be looking at. A number of questions at the moment, so probably to various officers. In terms of education, in terms of page 4, paragraph 8. So for teacher absence cover in terms of the overspend there, I take it that is literally, it's not paying the wages of those who are off sick or whatever. It is literally to bring in staff. That's that cost there. Maybe just clarify, Linda, I'm sure. On the health and social care element, I mean, yeah, it is a significant overspend again, and my fear is we're going to get into this perpetual cycle of we kind of fund again, as we should be doing, of course, the IJB, to then end up in a situation again, and we need to get them on a sound footing. Now, I saw that the Auditor General yesterday has, I think, been quite critical of NHS Ayrshire and Arran in terms of their unprecedented financial challenges, as he said yesterday. And of course, if they're £130 million in debt and they are our partners in the IJB at the end of the day, that does cause some real concern going forward. Yes, we must do what is right, particularly by our older residents. We're getting an older population and they are living longer, but with additional needs and support. I think when we hear the Scottish Government have £1 billion overspend, my message would be loud and clear to the Government. Open the wallet, get some money spent, and certainly I think we can see from the situation here that it's quite stark, particularly in relation to IJB, and I note that that is the case all over the country. My next comment on the Boswell Book Festival, absolutely welcome it. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a small amount of money, relatively speaking, that we're looking to support. I think I just would like to know a wee bit more about the outcomes and you know, how a bit more of the stats around what's going on with the book festival. And just a question, I take it they can't get any grant funding elsewhere. Why is it coming directly from the council? I mean, I know it would be anyway in terms of grants, but just a bit around that if possible. Thanks.
Thanks, Barry. Colin.
In relation to obviously the initial point, and I'm happy for Sir Linda to come in terms of the school absence cover, you're absolutely right. It's essentially having to bring in additional teaching staff, etc., to cover for absence within the schools. There has been additional resources have been put in there, and there has been work done by education in terms of the devolved school rules and the management of that policy. But again, it remains an area of pressure that the education management are actively addressing, and it's significantly down from where it was last year, which I think at one point it was almost £1.5 million over. So it's a significant movement there, but still obviously a pressure for the area. In relation to the Health and Social Care Partnership, Absolutely, it is. It's singularly the most financially pressure area that the council face. It has, as you rightly said, been an issue last year, to which funding was put into by the council at the year end. I think an amount of about £6 million to address that. There is obviously work ongoing in relation to efficiency measures and changes within the Health and Social Care Partnership to look at how that has been addressed. And again, I'm happy for sort of kind of colleagues within the partnership to sort of comment on the work in that. It is obviously a difficult area to address. The demand is significant, and with any change, there is lead times in order to introduce that. So there is. But again, as you know, it is a national picture right across Scotland, and a sort of kind of a national solution is certainly something that needs to be looked at, rather than individual authorities each having to try and address their own financial position. In relation to the Boswell Book Festival, I'll be honest, I don't know too much detail about that one, but I'm happy to kind of get information about what funding elsewhere is available for them, and again, what information we get about what outcomes we get from that funding. So I'm happy to get that for you, Councillor Douglas.
Thanks, Colin. Just a couple of things. In terms of the Scottish Government overspend, I was at Cloyes on Friday and I never heard that, but if there is any money going, rest assured we'll be chasing every penny as we did last year and every previous year to make sure that local government has its, well, at least its fair share, if not more. In terms of the health and social care overspend and maybe just some of the issues related to the, if Eric could come in there.
Yes, sure. Thank you. I guess it's important for us to remember concretely what social care and health is in terms of the services that are there, and not just see it as a budget. So, quick review of the services that are delegated by parties to the integration scheme should illustrate that. On the NHS side, we have the lead role for primary care and urgent care across Ayrshire. That's primary care teams, independent contractors in medical, dental, ophthalmic, pharmacy. We have East Ayrshire Community Hospital, district nursing, including the out-of-hours district nurses. We have allied health professionals, intermediate care and rehabilitation, older adult CMHTs, adult CMHTs, addiction services, school nursing, health visiting, and prison healthcare teams delegated to East Ayrshire. And those services, by and large, on the NHS side, are online and managing within those budgets. So that's a message on the NHS side. In terms for what Councillor Douglas was raising there from the report yesterday. For council services delegated to the IJB, these span prison social work, justice services, out-of-hours social work services for children, adults, older people, services and support for adults with physical disabilities, learning disabilities, adult protection, child protection, domestic abuse services, commissioned care home services and commissioned care at home services, adult placement, carer support services, community care assessment teams, day services, supported services, short breaks, a whole range of very concrete services for our most vulnerable. And I think it's important for members to recognise that these services are there for inclusion and meaningful activities for our most vulnerable residents and those that are at most risk of exclusion and harm. Services focused on intimate, hands-on personal care, support with the basics of human dignity, fulfilling lives at or as close to home as is safe and practicable. And where people choose to live in a care home where they can no longer manage independently, those are also services that we provide in commission. There's over 6,000 people supported by social care in East Ayrshire, 1,200 receiving care at home, 700 in care homes. In addition, the whole range of health improvement and preventative supports that are commissioned from community and voluntary organisations and other delivery partners. We see regularly through care opinion, written and verbal feedback, daily examples and stories of fundamental importance of these services for individuals in our communities. And those are incorporated into the annual performance reports, Chief Social Work Officer reports that come in front of members. Important to see social care and its contribution to the economy and well-being of East Ayrshire. Social care itself employs over 1,850 individuals. More broadly, health and social care makes an employment contribution to East Ayrshire that's greater than manufacturing, retail, hospitality and car repair combined. The economic contribution is direct and induced, and on that basis it runs into the hundreds of millions. For every £1 spent, there are benefits from social care of £1.98. It's about 17 billion across Scotland, and the economic benefits are 34 billion. We have workforce challenges, that's no doubt about that, but a great many people make the positive choice to work in care and give of themselves to make good lives for others. There's been significant management action taken forward via the financial recovery plans, viewing that work through the lens of cost reduction, demand management and fundamental transformation of services. Some examples on that, members. We've reviewed eligibility criteria. We've changed shift patterns in care at home. We have spread reablement more broadly across the service. We've undertaken digital transformation in care at home, more rigorous absence management, reductions in double handling, increasing commissioned services in order to reduce unit costs, the use of new technology in supplementing hands-on care, right-sizing the workforce through public-facing recruitment, and further strengthening screening and assessment processes. These actions have had impact. In the year to date, we have seen a 3.4% reduction in planned care at home hours from 11,500 to 11,126. Year to date, similarly, we've seen an increase in commissioned care at home of close to 9%, and that's on top of a 20% increase in the previous year, and the share of planned hours to over 20%, which has been our target agreed through the IGB. Care home numbers for older people reduced from 660 at the turn of the year to 649 in August. The hard reality here for us is one of increasing eligible demand against action to realise efficiencies. So looking at locality health and care services, over 500 supports have been considered by the resource allocation group to ensure appropriate, effective and efficient supports are in place. That has delivered 1.3 million of efficiencies, but £900,000 worth of new eligible demand has come through the door. So that's a net 440k improvement. However, looking at the residential element of that, £4.2 million worth of new eligible demand is presented in that same period. For wellbeing and recovery, there's a similar picture. Over 300 supports have been screened for appropriateness, effectiveness and efficiency. £1.3 million worth of cost reductions have been identified, but new demand pressures of 3.1 million have presented in that same period, resulting in a net increase of 1.8 million. I hope that gives some assurance around about the actions that we've taken in terms of our most cherished citizens and activity to control spending. But this is the reality of demographic change that we've been highlighting for a protracted period of time. It relates to the drivers of increasing inequality, an ageing population, improved life expectancy for people with complex needs as a result of better treatment and the change in environmental circumstances. These are positive social benefits, and they also mean higher demand that social care is expected to respond to. Just a reminder around about the value that we place on the care and support of our most at risk of exclusion and harm, what we want to see for our immediate relatives, our relations, and how that extends across other families, communities and society in general. Tackling this is something that we're working on, and we would aim to work more broadly with delivery partners and community planning partners at a local level. But I think, as Councillor Linton and Councillor Douglas have said, this needs to be recognised as a national issue. Noting the causal position for an immediate call of 750 million for social care, and also flagging up independent think tanks. The Health Foundation Real Centre estimates at a UK level we would need to see a real terms increase of 3.4% per annum just to keep pace with demographic change. And to do this and invest in improvement of quality, there would be a need for between 14 and 18 billion by 2030 across the UK. Locally, we need support around about these to own the issues that are being faced by Health and Social Care Partnership and the IGB, and to lobby and advocate to plan for a longer term solution, as well as interim decisions. And as Colin said, detailed directions are being prepared just now and will follow in the coming weeks and days. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Eric. Quite a stark decision, and some difficult choices for us in the months ahead. just that's right to highlight those. As you say, Eric, social benefit, that we pride ourselves on just increases demand, and we probably are more conscious of the social benefit. I'll say this in some of our neighbouring authorities, but we'll just have to look to cut our costs accordingly, and that's going to be difficult for us and our residents. But I was part of the folk in COSLA that was calling out for a national solution in the 750 million that we need for health and social care, and hopefully we'll have a positive response to that, because it's absolutely needed, just as demographics change and demand changes. So we'll see how that goes, but it's probably one of our highest priorities. We really do keep our eye on that in the weeks and months ahead. Okay, anyone else? Claire, Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Chair. There's not much to be said actually after that. I was going to ask Eric to expand, but that was a very sobering and succinct summary of what faces us within the services, and he's quite right to point out that this is people and it's a service. 1 in 12 people in Scotland work in health and social care, so it's not just our own authority that's affected. There's been years, sadly, of real-term cuts and underspending, and it's all coming to a head now. We are delivering mostly statutory services now, and we might have to reduce further to statutory services. I would hope that all councillors will go and listen to what Eric has said today. I think this is thoroughly important. There was 2 excellent papers last week explaining some of the sobering thoughts at council, 2 papers, and unfortunately I think they got lost among a lot of noise last week. This is what we have to deliver as a council for our citizens, for our communities, and I'd just like to thank Eric for that. I did actually have a question, and it was again about reserves, which are very topical at the moment. We're sitting at 2%. Colin, do we have an anticipated timescale where we could maybe get back up to either 2.5% so that we can deal with these emergencies when they come along? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Maitland. I wouldn't say we have an anticipated timescale, but our intention is that between now and as we go into the budget process, as we do in particular annually, we will look at our current earmarked reserves and do a balance review, which will form part of those reviews as to whether balances that are currently earmarked need to remain earmarked to allow that to be that funding to perhaps be considered as being necessary elsewhere. It will result in some tough choices perhaps in relation to some planned activity. As always, going forward, we will look as part of the budget process and anything to build up our reserves as much as we can. As we can see, obviously, from the sort of financial position that some services find themselves in, that can be difficult in the current climate. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but it's certainly a focus that myself and Joe have about pushing back up towards, as you rightly say, about the 2.5% upwards. At the moment, we're sitting at 2%, which is still within our minimum range, but it's not where we would like to be. I will say it is a better position than a number of other authorities, a large number of other authorities, but still we would prefer to have them position improved in that. So that will certainly probably be our first forthcoming activity for members to consider as we review our balances within the next couple of months.
Okay, thanks. Eddie, do you want to maybe come in relation to the health and social care issues are in?
I suppose where I come in is in terms of ownership of where we go going forward. Members will know I've been around health and social care a long time, and when I first came into it, care at home was home help, Monday to Friday, 9 to 1. You know, like now we don't do any of the tasks that the home helps used to do. We're very much about delivering personal care, you know, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A lot of older people lived in Nightingale wards in Homehead, you know, Kirtland Side. You know, our adults with disabilities lived in Dunlop House, Strathlee. All of that's changed, so there's been massive change over that period of time. We're at a time where we need to look to change again, and indeed, you know, as a council, we look how we do that together. Some of the decisions that council have taken about how services go to the Leisure Trust to protect the, early intervention services. They are really important in terms of the overall, if I can call it, public health wellbeing, of our communities. And indeed tomorrow, there's a joint conference between housing and social care talking about what's the need for, where are we all going to live when we're old going forward? What's the model of that going to be for that? And we need to plan for that in terms of housing and link housing into that. Housing is likely the most essential element in social care going forward. And so we need to plan for that in terms of that there. But it is that bit about how it's a whole council issue. We hear the pressures in education around additional support needs. These young people become adults and they're working their way through. And again, the change we're seeing in the demographic in terms of our children is going to be a pressure on us as adults come through as well. And that's again linking back into the work that Linda's doing around employability and trying to make sure people can be inclusive within this. So the immediate pressure we're seeing is within the Health and Social Care Partnership. The wider issue for us is for the whole council and practically every part of department of the council about how we change as the communities change going forward for us. That doesn't take away from the fiscal challenge that we have today. And one of the things that we're going to have to do as a council is make sure while we're doing all that planning, we actually make sure that our revenue continues to be balanced as well. And that's the challenge between the two things.
Thanks, Eddie. Okay, Neil, Councillor Ingram.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, obviously, Eddie picked up a really important point there. Care at home is essential for us to deliver a good service to people who need it. Part of that, obviously, is staying in your own home and where needed, that home being adapted for your needs. So in regard to the kind of aids and adaptations, where are we with that, and are we on track to meet those needs for people in their own homes?
Eric, can you answer that?
We are on track to meet that. It's part of how we follow the national policy at the moment. So we've aligned our eligibility with the national policy that came out in 2023, trying to be tenure neutral where possible, and to make sure that we're delivering to keep people in their own homes. We have to apply that consistently across our population and in line with the responsibilities that fall to the council and RSLs. And also we have to be asking ourselves the best value question and whether homes are available and able to meet persons' lifetime needs. That's part of what the guidance drives us towards. We have a really efficient store that delivers equipment at the moment, and we work really closely with housing in terms of seeking proper alternatives and housing options for people. So they've got a real strength of practice around about that in East Ayrshire.
Thanks, Eric. You happy with that, Neil?
Yeah, I think obviously the housing options that is another element where there is pressure. So it would be great wherever possible to look at the way that we introduce aids and adaptations into people's homes, and where we might need to work with housing to make sure that those needs are addressed. Then I think we need to do that.
Thanks. I don't know, Blair, do you want to comment further on that?
Through your chair, yeah, recognising the Chief Executive's comments around about housing being an essential part of social care, housing transfer £1.3 million each year to the Health and Social Care Partnership to deliver aids and adaptations for our tenants. Housing options is we're looking at the assessment by our occupational therapists and housing much closer than we ever have in terms of looking at the housing impact on decisions that may be made by our occupational therapists, recognising that there are challenges about meeting particular need within community. But positively, we've seen an ambitious programme of aids and adaptations, acquisitions and new build properties over the past 10 years, which will go some way to help meeting those challenges head on. We see in our new build programme that we are achieving a target of 10% of all of our new builds are wheelchair accessible standards, which is a target that was set to us by the government. and our acquisition strategy will come before members on the 19th of November, which looks to set out further ambitions round about enhancing that programme and with a focus on meeting particular need for the people that require alternative housing that best meets their needs. Thank you.
Thanks, that's helpful. Okay, Eric, yeah.
Just building on what Blair said there, it's also how we can work with our delivery partners in different ways to deliver equipment and adaptations. So looking at the role of care and repair in there, and also coming from the conference that we've got tomorrow, really good design. So we reduce the demand for aids and adaptations in the longer term. And that's something we'll be getting showcased tomorrow at the conference around about dementia design in particular. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. I know that's a concern a number of members have certainly raised it with me, and I think we'll look forward to having that conversation, see if we can change things, because things can't remain as they are, I don't think. Okay, anyone else? Okay, I think we want to capital now. Simon.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. Starting off with the capital summary page, just to note, as I've mentioned before, that members will be aware that the capital programme is continuing to face ongoing pressures on affordability due to construction inflation and the cost of borrowing. On the summary page here, you'll see the bars to the left, which show the current year budget of £115 million with a projected spend of 107. The variance of 7.6 reflects the reprofiling of projected spend for a number of projects, which are detailed within the covering report and also as part of this report. Top right, where the speedometer is, that shows the current year spend of £25 million, and the pie chart below that shows the share of the current year budget allocation between the strategic work streams. The bar chart below that details how the current budget is funded. And if I move to the next page of capital progress shows major projects ordered in relation to their current REBA stage, starting with those completed at the top and moving down to those at the earlier stages of development. And linked to that on the next page is the anticipated REBA stage for major projects over the next 5 years. So the following pages then move into the specific information and projects grouped in their strategic work streams, which, as usual, I won't go through in detail, but if I could highlight some of the key points for a selection of projects. Starting with completed projects, some good news for St Sophia's Primary School, which was completed in the summer, which has now been shortlisted for a Built Environment Accelerate to Zero award, which is taking place tomorrow night. So fingers crossed that this Pathfinder project's recognised. There's approximately £36 million of construction contracts on site, including the Palace Theatre and Grand Hall as part of Cultural Kilmarnock, where works commenced on the 4th of August on the £20 million levelling up funded project and will continue on a phased basis over the next 2 years. Initial works have included formation of traffic management, exterior hoarding and internal asbestos removal. With the Galston Library and Office, works to refurbish and extend the former Galston Chambers are now largely complete, with only some minor snagging to be undertaken. And at the Kilmarnock multi-storey car park site, main demolition works along with the majority of landscaping was completed during September. However, Scottish Power delays in decommissioning the existing substations required reprogramming of the final stage of demolition and landscaping, which is now anticipated to be completed within the next 2 weeks. Projects at detailed design stage include Kilmore's Primary School, where a contract to replace the existing dining hall and kitchen has been awarded, and works are anticipated to start later this month. At Stuart Academy, tenders for the extension and refurbishment are currently being prepared for issue around about the middle of this month, with an award of contract and site start anticipated early next year. Projects at the earlier stages of development include the Ayrshire Engineering Park and Ayrshire Manufacturing Investment Corridor as part of the Ayrshire Growth Deal, where Phase 1 infrastructure works commenced on site in October, with an anticipated completion by next October. And in parallel to that, design development for the Centre of Excellence and other industrial units is ongoing. With the Doon Valley Community Campus, revised proposals for refurbishment and extension of the existing school have now been prepared and stakeholder engagement and consultations ongoing. Detailed designs for the first phase of improvements to the existing leisure centre are currently being developed, with works anticipated to start early next year. Thanks, Chair. Just a brief summary of some of the projects, but happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Simon. It's good to see some of the progress in some of these projects. Particularly, I was up on Saturday, I was in Galston, and I bumped into the Lord Lieutenant who showed me around some of the elevations of the Galston Town Hall, and it really is coming on, particularly the elevation that you don't see for the main street. It's looking absolutely fabulous, and I think look forward to see the opening of that, and it's really enhancing the whole of the Galston Town Centre with the other works that's been taking place. And also sadly saw some of the seats from the old Palace Theatre getting flung into a skip yesterday, some of the reds. So that was many a pantomime, many a gig and all the rest that we've seen there. But good to see some absolutely some movement there. So that's good to see. Just a kind of wider issue in terms of the programme. Just, you know, in terms of there's what kind of exact pressure is on the wider capital programme? Is there any scope for increasing it, or where are we just now? Or is there any projects at risk because we can't? It's breaching affordability. Just if you kind of sum up for me, Simon. That'd be helpful.
Thanks, Chair. The current climate out there is difficult. We are seeing tender returns coming back higher than anticipated. We've rehearsed the reasons for that around about COVID, Brexit, cost of living, and everything. And it's a challenging time. Members will be aware that there's been a number of projects that we've come back through East Ayrshire Performs and other reports looking for some additional funding to support them, which has been recognised. Finance colleagues have said before that the capital programme's fixed in terms of its borrowing just now, so we're not looking to increase any borrowing at this point in time. So these pressures will need to be absorbed from somewhere within that programme. And we're currently reviewing just what that might look like, and we'll be bringing back suggestions and recommendations in the near future. There will be a capital programme annual report, as usual, in February, which we would seek to capture all these pressures within.
Thanks. Maybe Colin as well, if you could add any further info.
Thanks, through you, Chair. Just to sort of kind of add on to that position, members will obviously be aware that I think last year previously, as part of the capital programme, we set a limit of 8% in relation to the level of what was affordable in terms of the capital programme. Earlier in the revenue page, I referred to the resilience indicators, and in there I noted that we were currently at 6 pence in the pound and 6%, but I would note that is the current position, that actually the capital programme, as it builds up over the next few years, as it stands, will require a level of borrowing, and it is currently anticipated that borrowing will take it up to the limit of 8% as it stands. So in terms of affordability, the capital programme is, if you like, as it stands, maxed out. There can be change in that. Obviously, we're currently living with high level of borrowing rates, which has a huge impact on the affordability of the capital programme. We are always hoping that they come down, but as with everything else with inflation, it's not coming down at the rate that we would like it to. And certainly recent discussions with our Treasury advisors have indicated that over the next year, even our short-term borrowing rates are particularly high. So at the moment, we are actually taking a strategy where we're under borrowed and are actually using our reserves to avoid borrowing at current rates. So again, that's why in a financial perspective, we're kind of saying the capital programme is really at the level of affordability, and any change to it would result in choices that members would have to make.
Thanks very much, Colin, that's helpful. Councillor Maven, Linda.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Simon, can I take you to paragraph 25 in the table there with regard to the reprofiling? Just looking for a wee bit more information regarding the decisions, especially about the first 3 items in the table. That's okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't actually have the table in front of me. If you could just give me a second, I'll hang on a second. Yes, so the first 3 items, through you, Chair, first 3 items in the table. I mean, the anticipated spend on these projects is set, has been set some time ago, specifically around about Ayrshire Manufacturing Investment Corridor and the Engineering Park. When the budgets were originally established and the projections anticipated, that was the likely spend in these years. The reality of progress on site is such that it's not expended as much. So the revised costs for 25-26 are set out, and the balance is reprofiled. The projects, as I've mentioned before, are progressing well. We've started on site with the infrastructure works now, and are developing the detail for the remaining phases of those. So that's the 2 big ones. The first one around about Unthank Primary School. Similarly, there was an anticipation of projected spend, and the scope of works that's been agreed with the school staff and education colleagues, and that we've realised over 25-26 is less than was originally anticipated. So there's been a reprofiling of £286,000 with that one.
Sir Douglas.
Thank you, Leader. In terms of the the waste review, and we know the quite considerable additional costs of Garlaff that we noted, actually, I think last cabinet, or was it council, where we made that decision there for the additional spending. I think, given we know we're also going to have to do quite a bit at Western Road as well, what assurances can you give us in terms of around the costs there, and you know, given this quite considerable difference for Garlaff, are we expecting something similar for Western Road? Thanks.
Thanks, through you, Chair. I think if I was being honest, I would say yes, we are anticipating some additional cost at Western Road. Tenders are out at the moment and are due back on the 12th of November. We've engaged with the marketplace to try and stimulate interest in the project and get as competitive tenders as we can. So it looks like we'll get a significant number of tender returns, but we shall just have to wait and see what they look like before we can report back. But I think, as you mentioned, Councillor Douglas, the report on Garlaff did make reference to Western Road, and our thoughts at the moment that it's likely that it will be over budget.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Councillor Barton, Graham.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Reid. No, I'll just make a comment on it. Myself and Councillor Cowan went to visit Bullablank during the summer there, and we know that how the school is very much over capacity, and the staff are working wonders to operate within the space they do. So to see that we're got just about there to award a contract for that extension is very much welcome. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we'd all agree that's good to see the progress there. Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Linton.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. And just reflecting on Colin's points he was making there with regards to the difficult position we find ourselves in just now with regards to borrowing. I think it's right that we should take some credit, Councillor Reid, for the amount of new build that has went on since this administration came in. I think that particularly around schools, leisure and the provision of council houses, I think we have been in a very active council considering the size of the local authority here. I think our spending over those 15 or so years has been considerable on these fronts, and personally I take great pride in it.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Cowan, Elaine.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sam, for the report. And obviously it is quite sobering when we're hearing officers with all the kind of financial strain. So I think it is important to call out the positive bits of news as well. So I was actually on Thank Parent Council last night, and I managed to see the toilet refurbishment in the supported learning service area, and it was fabulous. I was actually taking pictures of the toilets that they are so good, so I will be sharing those with my colleagues. I think that should be the standard from now on. Sorry to put more pressure on you, Simon. And obviously we were invited to the opening of the garden that has just been done, which the parents and the children and the staff are so proud of. Unfortunately, due to the extended full council, the 3 ward members weren't able to make the open day, but the education director was there, and I just managed to get there at the very end. But it was wonderful to see that work and the difference that will make to the children's lives that use that facility, and also the staff. So thank you to Simon's team for all that work that was done over the last 2 summers. Well, the school was closed to minimise the disruption to the school. It's very much appreciated.
Thanks very much. I hope you don't lose your phone, looking at what you've been taking photos of, but I think the serious point that you make, I've not seen that after. I remember visiting the school way before when the toilets weren't the best of quality, but I look forward to my return just to see how how we look at your pictures maybe after the meeting. Oh, okay, Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose this one's for Colin. Colin, it's around about and the borrowing and the Prudential Code. Maybe a wee bit, if you could give me a wee bit of background around about the Prudential Code, compliance with that code, and maybe some of the implications of if we don't comply, what it can actually mean.
Thanks, through you, Chair. Well, the Prudential Code's principally set up and established in order for the council to follow, and it has a number of indicators that we're asked to sort of progress and monitor throughout the year to essentially look at the affordability of the capital programme and the use of borrowing. There are a variety of indicators, but the vast majority of them are focused on ensuring that that any borrowing taken is for the purposes of capital expenditure and not to support revenue, but also to make sure that borrowing is in line with what is the funding and availability of funds to the council. So as a code, it's essentially there to help you sort of kind of self-monitor and monitor within those reasons. Like everything, our capital and our sort of indicators are examined by our external parties, including external audit, who would review that. If we were breaching that code, that would raise alarms about the level of spend that we were undertaking, and that would be expected that was being flagged in terms of the ongoing affordability within the council. So it's like revenue, it's like the financial resilience indicators that I showed earlier. These are indicators that are designed to enable you to look at aspects of how you're borrowing against your capital programme. It sets limits in terms of your capital financing requirement, and lets you monitor that to let you see the level of borrowing that your capital programme is going to require, but it allows you to report that, and we report that back through the Treasury Management Report. The mid-year report for that will be presented to Cabinet in December, where we will give you details of that current position, and as the Chief Financial Officer, Joe is asked to give assurances as part of that he's satisfied that we are meeting those prudential indicators. So it's although they're indicators, again, it's that overarching monitoring responsibility that allows us and external parties to sort of review how we are monitoring our borrowing and our capital programme.
Eddie, Chief Executive, if you want to come in.
Just to take that to that, kind of higher level, I think that, paragraph 20 of the table there is really, really important for us. I mean, the bottom 2 lines of that show that we commit about 40% of our budget to our education service. Just now we commit 30% of our budget to health and social care. And, we're saying we're going to 8% of the budget. That'll be basically to pay for the capital programme, the mortgage. That's us up at 78% of the budget that's really difficult to do anything with. And if you think the rest of that budget has to pay for everything else, when we need to actually then look at efficiencies, and we are going to have to look at pressures going forward, unless we can do things differently, we're trying to do it off a tiny part of the budget. And the more we borrow, the more that 8%, if it was breached, then we'd be taking savings off even less. And so that's all our stuff around greener communities. We've agreed the waste review over a 10-year period. We obviously invest in the Leisure Trust as well. So the actual scope that we have as a council to actually do things differently is limited. And that was why I think, again, the paper that we brought in June, you know, to talk about what can we do as a shared service model across Ayrshire and different things like that, or anywhere else when possible, what can we do with digital are the types of things that we're going to have to do differently. Otherwise, we're working on a tiny part of the budget that we've got flexibility around.
No, I think that's helpful. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, anyone else? I think that's capital, so I think that's anything else in East Ayrshire performance. We've got. Well, Amanda, over to you.
Thanks, Chair, and morning, members. I don't intend to go through too much detail, but just pull out a few points, but obviously happy to take any questions in any of the slides. So the first workforce slide shows staffing with the full-time equivalent and the headcount both decreasing within this period. And the next slide shows our our trainees. Sorry, I should have thanked in the last page, which also showed we're under 30 employees, with the overall number at the 30th of September being 989, with 108 of these being our young people in apprenticeships. Next goes into detail of our trainees, and the number of trainees, whilst it's decreased in this period, there has been of note 2 modern apprentices gained posts out with East Ayrshire Council and 5 gained within the council, with a further 1 moving to further education. And the decrease is due to the timing of recruitment. We have a number of young people about to start, but they're just going through the employment checks at this point in time. This next page shows the recruitment with a decrease in this period of 67. And on the right-hand side of the page shows the new starts within the council for the period July to September, which totaled 189, which was an increase of 108 from the previous quarter and can be linked to the academic year for schools. The number of leavers is shown, and that is 182 who left the council in the 3-month period, which is the same as the previous 3-month period, with the main reason for individuals leaving as resignations. Moving on to absences. Within the period, there were 6,383 instances of absence. The working days lost had decreased by 2,265, which equates to a decrease of 0.09 working days lost per employee. The absence length is split into short-term absences and long-term absences, with short-term being 1,924. This is something that we're looking at and how we change our policy with our policy review and how we manage these absences. Long-term absences 612, and that will be within the policy review as well, but to reassure members that we now have an action plan around every one of these long-term absences. Reasons for absence are detailed on this page. Again, where stress is the top reason. Oops, I went too far. Totally lost the page now. I'll let Martin bring it back. I'll talk to the... So the top 5 reasons for absence remain the exact same as what they were last year, although there is a bit of variation. With personal stress reducing, a slight reduction in work-related stress and stomach and abdominal. There's a slight increase in musculoskeletal and operations recovery. What we'd note is these 5 top reasons for absence covers 62% of all absences across the council. We have just recently introduced the early intervention for musculoskeletal, and we're hopeful that that will make an impact there. Putting stress at the bottom, it was a request at last Cabinet that we had this report here. All three reasons for stress, personal, work-related and work and personal stress together. We see some increases and decreases, but overall it equates to a reduction of 1,755 days, and hopefully that's attributed to the work that we're doing with early intervention. As members know, we're undertaking the policy review for all aspects of absence management. We've got the independent review panel, which is well established now and is looking at complex cases and also compliance to ensure that the policy has been adhered to. I will also be bringing a report back in the first quarter to Cabinet to update on absence and taking account of the comments and the questions from last week's council and ensure that they're covered within that report. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Amanda. Just a couple of things for me. First of all, in terms of the workforce trainees, I was down in McCall Avenue in Cumnock yesterday with Councillor McMahon, and we met 3 apprentices, including the Scottish Apprentice of the Year, Gillian, and I think it was Mark and Ewan was the other 2 apprentices, all in their 4th year, and all due to get their final, get their trades this year. And that was a result of an initiative we took, about 4 years ago to increase the number of apprenticeships that went through. And it's great to see that come to fruition. And there's a good future for those 3 individuals there. And it was really good to meet them. Just at a wee point, I was also earlier in the week, I was at a meeting of a subcommittee meeting of the Health Board where they were looking at staff absences. And there seems to be some kind of strange patterns. And it was similar to our own in terms of increased short-term absences and decreased long-term absences, which they haven't quite fathomed out either behind it, but it's just changed over the last couple of years. So there's definitely kind of changes in patterns post-COVID that's going on there. It might be worth keeping an eye on, So just with that, I'll just make those comments. Amanda, I don't know if you've seen that in other authorities as well? Or?
So we have seen, since COVID, we've seen a significant increase in the short-term absences and repeated short-term absences. I think it's a bit about coming out of COVID, how folks see things differently, and there's a bit of an education bit there as well from where folk came to work before with a sniffle or a cough, folk are staying at home. And I kind of get that, so we do need to work through that. We have been working with our colleagues in the Health Board as well. They're actually looking to adapt our independent review panel model, so we've been sharing ideas between one another as well.
That's good to hear. Anyone else? Okay, thanks for that, Amanda. Now got digital, and that's Paul Tolan. Paul.
Good morning, members, and through you, Chair. I thought it might be helpful just to give you some extra information this morning to supplement the narrative that's in the report that you have in front of you this morning. So there's only a couple of slides here on digital. The update itself is split into 3 different tabs. We've got the summary tab, which details the progress towards the 3-year savings plan to date. The digital projects tab provides an overview of current projects, and the ad hoc digital tab provides some detail around about completed projects. If we take a look at the digital projects tab, first of all, the first 2 points have been largely covered by Eric already. The introduction of the new care at home system went live in May, and there's some work still ongoing to improve that database information and how we can use that information to plan out better dynamic appointment scheduling. The tech team that was referred to this morning is in place, and they're currently looking at the range of digital aids and adaptations that can be used to help keep people in their own homes for longer. Now, that's not just the specialist projects that you get in the marketplace, but it's also the everyday products that people currently use, the smart speakers, smart TVs, video doorbells, and smart kitchen and bedroom appliances. We continue to roll out our Microsoft 365 suite of products. We continue to rely really heavily on our 70+ digital champions across all our services. And to unlock the full value of the product suite itself, it's important that we develop training and support for our staff. And to this end, we continue to refresh our knowledge hub using our own training materials and materials that we share with NHS colleagues. In addition to that, the People and Culture Service have recently appointed two digital trainers, who will help develop more training pathways to improve productivity and improve digital confidence. As a council, we're now federated with over 85 participating organisations. That's a mix of councils and NHS trusts. This allows us to create Teams channels, Teams chats, shared calendar functions, and over 500 of our own staff can now access the OneDrive facility for internal file sharing and real-time collaboration. Our 365 licence will expire in May next year, and we're currently reviewing and baselining our licence model in preparation for a procurement exercise that we'll undertake at the beginning of next year. The satellite network solution referred to as a Pan-Ayrshire project, we're currently working on a collaboration with the Ayrshire Civil Contingencies team. This project will provide a deployable Wi-Fi solution that can be used to support any number of different scenarios, either in a civil contingency environment or to support large-scale community events. We continue to make changes to our telephony platform that will support the introduction of our centralised customer contact centre in 2026. And as noted in the report, our Business Innovation Manager has collated additional data and call volume information to take to the Council Management Team. This information will help determine how and when services will be migrated to the expanded customer contact centre. And finally, in terms of our digital front door offering, final testing of the workflows that we built into the Contact Us submission is continuing and will be rolled out to all services by November. It's anticipated that the initial phase of the digital front door Contact Us process will commence in December. If we move on to our ad hoc projects, our innovation team have recently completed the last of a series of digital updates and projects for environmental health, thus completing the range of online services in that space. And working with colleagues in ICT, information governance, and through consultation with our trade unions and council management team, we have developed an AI policy covering safe, ethical and best practice use. We hope to take this to councillor conversation early in December before taking to council for approval. In the meantime, we've been working on a very small number of pilot projects, and one that's highlighted in the report here is the pilot of a transcription and summation tool. A small step into the world of AI, we will now take time to evaluate and consider the lessons learned whilst we await the approval of the policy itself. Colleagues in ICT have also been undertaking a number of in-house system developments. The report has highlighted just 3 such projects. The education tracking and monitoring system is now live. The incident management system is designed complete and ready to go into production. And we're almost there with an agreed design for the new performance management system. We have a very talented and highly skilled team of developers across our ICT teams who are keen to not only support third-party systems, but also maximise their own skill sets for the benefit of the council. We're in the early stages of creating a development oversight group to strengthen collaboration across our teams and the innovation team within finance and digital, to share knowledge and reduce the risks with ongoing support of complex systems, to promote best practice in software development and to offer practical guidance, host technical demonstrations and workshops, and maintain a shared knowledge hub where our in-house developers can exchange ideas, tools and solutions. We're establishing a framework to manage projects presented to the digital oversight group, ensuring that each project is assessed and evaluated to determine which will deliver the best value to the council. It's likely this will be led by the Digital Management Board that council previously approved to oversee all digital projects. We will always ensure that our ICT developments are compliant with relevant ICT security standards. Ever mindful of the security threat, we will continue to implement appropriate measures to safeguard our systems, our data and our users. Members, the savings to date are detailed in the digital summary on the slide here, and I hope the information and narrative I've given you has given you some insight into the work we're undertaking to support our council's digital programme through smarter ways of working that will enhance service delivery and ultimately achieve efficiencies. Happy to stop there, Chair, and take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Paul. We're just kind of wondering if you can use the new presentation methods. You're in big bother, but you successfully managed to navigate it. Paul, can I just say I'm just particularly welcome, before I bring others in, the review of IAI policy. It's an absolute useful tool, but it's also a tool that can be used for abuse. So welcome to look forward to having that conversation the next few weeks. Councillor Maben.
Thank you, Leader. Thanks, Paul. A couple of wee questions, if you don't mind. The two projects that have yet to get off the mark, the digital efficiencies for planning and the FPM one, do we have an anticipated start date or finish date in relation, or how long they're going to take from start to finish? And the other question is about the AI policy. We know AI is a moving target, so if we make a policy up in November, is that policy still going to be relevant in December? And do you anticipate having to make loads and loads of constant changes to it? Because obviously we're all aware of how quickly AI is moving out in the real world.
Yep, thank you, Councillor, and through you, Chair. The planning project, actually, the first meeting was held just last week, so that one is now actually just underway. I would anticipate, now I'm not on the board as such, but I would probably anticipate we're looking at a 2-year project for that. It's quite a big project, and I'll need to check with the property asset project. I'll quite happily come back to you on that one. In terms of AI, I think we've got a lot of work to do before we can say we're even, on that AI journey yet. The policy will take 2 years. As a policy, it will basically set out the rules and regulations of how we can be using the AI, how we can be putting data into AI tools in the public environment that we shouldn't be putting data in. So the policy is just to kind of provide some standards and governance for our staff to make sure the do's and don'ts. What we really need to be then looking at longer term is an actual AI strategy document. I think that's going to take a fair bit of work to do as well, because if you talk to industry experts, they talk about the need for security, for sustainability. They talk about our IT infrastructure has got to be ready for it. There's concerns around about where do we get the money to dabble in AI as well, because we've got lots of legacy systems that are tied into contracts. It's going to be expensive to replace legacy systems that will then be replaced by something we can use AI for. We need to talk about investment in staff and investment in hardware. So there's just lots of pound signs starting to come through with AI already. Last Friday, at Cosler Leaders, there was a paper taken through from the Scottish Government Digital Office, making a move to take more of a proactive role in leading on digital projects that could perhaps span across more than one local authority. So it's this working together in collaboration, and I think possibly that's where we might get the better benefits from. I think trying to spend on AI as one local authority is going to be really expensive. So we might be looking at what else is going on, and I think maybe the digital office taking that lead will be quite helpful for us. Just, I mentioned briefly that the summation tool, that's actually was an in-house development. We looked at the marketplace and we saw how much it would cost even to just buy a simple tool, and it was really, really expensive. So we've knocked one up, for want of a better phrase, within IT, and it seems to deliver what we're looking for. The mix going forward will be what we do in terms of the market and buying in IT tools and what we can develop in-house. And I think that's why we need to have this oversight group and some rules around about the projects that we'll take forward. We can't deliver it all in-house, but it's about gauging what we can deliver and what's going to be best value for the council and what we need to buy in from the marketplace.
Thanks, Paul. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you very much. And again, it's on AI. It's just a couple of weeks ago I asked when we were going to have an AI policy, and here it comes. So I'm delighted to see it. I was looking at a paper from the Scottish Government in August 23, and they're looking for collaboration among councils to work together, if we can align services. So obviously that would be a cost efficiency, which I think is really interesting. There was another thing that I liked when you pulled it out was the trustworthy, ethical and inclusive, and that obviously relates back to the paper that Eric did earlier on today. So I'm actually really excited about the AI. I was a bit, maybe it's just because of my age, I was a bit wary of all this now, and it was at the beginning of the year, it was being touted as, you know, the most expensive projects we'll ever have. And we saw the Chinese people come along and burst that bubble. So it's good to see that we can do it in-house as well. So just thank you very much. I look forward to the conversation. I look forward to seeing the actual policy.
Okay, Councillor Cowan and Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Paul, for this paper. Some really exciting and interesting projects here. I was going to request a councillor conversation, but here it's already in the pipeline, so that is fantastic. And I know the AI is getting a lot of airtime, but I also don't think we should underestimate some of the more basic tools like the OneDrive and the Microsoft apps, the potential that can unlock for the workforce. And there was a phrase that someone used to say to me, stop working harder, you need to work smarter. So I think that's a sort of IT phraseology. But so thank you so much. Really looking forward to seeing some of these projects come forward.
Thanks. Councillor Linton.
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Paul, for the paper. I mean, I'm thinking back on having just retired from a long career in telecommunications, the technology that was available back in the 80s, and it was Stone Age, you know, and what really amazes me is the speed of progression. You know, it's exponential as technology is developed and implemented at an ever faster churn. And it ties in with what the Chief Executive said about using technology to our advantage. There's new technology coming around so quickly now, and it's really important that we keep on top of the most recent developments, because it can definitely work to our advantage by using that technology. So yeah, it's great.
Thanks. And Councillor McMahon.
So, and just following on for what Councillor Linton had said there, Paul, I had an irate constituent on the phone to me complaining that they're called twice to one of our services, 10 minutes and no answer. I managed to get through to the service. They could confirm to me the specific time that they were on the phone, how long they were on the phone for, and how they missed that specific call. So that enabled me to go back to my constituent and let them know this is when you called, they were on a call at that particular time. And using the AI technology advances that are available to us, I really look forward to the transcription and summation tool. How's it going to cope with my yins, sevens and elevens and Councillor Mabin's yats? But it'll, I dare say it'll be intriguing how they come out for the summaries of them.
I just sharpen my pencil and all the rest of it. Okay, Paul.
Sorry, Councillor, maybe you asked about keeping the policy up to date, and I think you're absolutely right. I think one thing we're going to have to do is make sure that we don't just put it on the bookshelf and leave it and review it every year. I think it's going to be a constant review process of the AI policy, particularly as we look at embedding it within services as well. A lot of the kind of contractors in the marketplace that are selling new kit have now got AI embedded in the policy. In their product. So I think for us it's about, as we develop and as we bring in AI into services, we'll need to reflect on the policy again to make sure we've covered every base, because the real concern you have at the moment is the very, very baseline, hence why the policy is coming before the strategy, is to make sure that staff are aware of the absolute dangers of AI as well. There's lots of good things around about that we can use it for, but we've got to make sure that we protect the council's data and their users at the end of the day as well.
Good. Okay, thanks very much for that report. No other questions. That's us at the end of East Ayrshire Performance. We get recommendations on page 3. Can we agree recommendations? Okay, and we're now on to discretionary death and service scheme, and Amanda's back. No, I missed one out. So, chief officers, local government employees, craft operators, local government pension scheme employers, discretions. Amanda.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to confirm the position of the Council's statement of policy for employers' discretions for local government employees pension scheme, and to ensure that we continue to meet with regulatory requirements. The background is detailed in paragraphs 3 to 9, with paragraph 6 confirming that we are required to formulate, publish and keep under review our statement of policy in regard to discretions. Taking members to paragraph 10, we have carried out that review and there is no proposed changes from the discretions that were published in 2024, and therefore no proposed changes to the 2025 statement. The implications are in paragraphs 11 and 12. And paragraph 13 details consultation that's underway, and paragraphs 14 through to 16 details the changes to the nominal minimum wage, pension wage age even. So whilst there's no changes at this particular period in time, there will be significant changes going forward. The recommendations are in paragraph 2, and it's to note the contents of the report, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Amanda. Any comments or questions? Okay, can we agree recommendations in paragraph 2? And on now to the item 4, which is a discretionary death and service scheme. Amanda.
Thank you. So this report is to seek Cabinet approval for the introduction of a discretionary death and service scheme. The background is laid out in paragraphs 3 through to 8, where noting that we previously had a group life assurance scheme, and that this benefit was given up as a saving. Part of that was a recommendation for officers to look at taking action forward to review to see if there was an alternative solution. The Council's workforce strategy, as you know, requires us to undertake reviews of policies and benefits, and within that action plan that was at Council last week, there's a specific action about death and service benefit. The proposals are laid out in paragraphs 9 through to 15. We're proposing to bring forward a scheme for all that would be £5,000. They would be required to put a nomination form in and have 6 months service, continuous service with the Council. The nomination form helps us to comply with the HMRC rules, and we have looked at digital solutions similar to those that we did for the qualities update data that allows us to contact every employee, but then for the employees who don't respond, continued reminders to them so that we ensure that we've got a nomination form for everybody in place. This is fundamentally different for the previous scheme, and it will be an in-house scheme that will be self-managed by my own team, and we're proposing that I come back to Cabinet on an annual basis to present the details. The implications are in paragraphs 16 through to 18, with recommendations at paragraph 2, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Amanda, for that report. In relation to a couple of questions around it, and whilst broadly I welcome it because I understand, if I'm right in this, that this wouldn't be considered as part of somebody's estate, and therefore would allow at the sad time of somebody's passing, the family to at least have money there for a funeral, which I think is absolutely crucial. However, what I wanted to know was what is the key difference, for example, somebody who's in the pension scheme, in terms of if they get the death and service benefit, which they would if they're with the Strathclyde pension scheme, and what percentage of the workforce aren't in the pension scheme, and are we finding it's a particular end of the spectrum? Is it, our lowest paid workers, for example, who feel they maybe can't afford to be in the pension scheme? And then a supplementary to that, but if you can come in with those, first of all, Amanda, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay, through you, Chair, just to confirm that the way that we're proposing to set up the scheme would mean that the money, the £5,000, goes to the nomination, and it would not be part of the estate, so it would be paid directly. And the idea behind that is to ensure that our employees have a dignified funeral. So that's the thing with that. The pension, death and service pension does become part of the estate, so it is separate to that. So that way we're staying out of we don't know whatever individual employees' circumstances are. So whilst they will get that death and benefit service as being part of the pension fund, we don't know what that means for them financially, what debts and everything else have to be settled. So this keeps it separate and ensures that there is money for the funeral. With regard to the number that's in the pension scheme, the majority of our employees are currently in the pension scheme. Last check, which was last month, there was 289 employees not within the pension scheme, and significant amount of those are in the lower end and in part-time employment, and obviously of a higher age group as well.
Amanda Barry.
Thank you. No, thank you for that, Amanda. And I think that puts probably into stark reality is that we are finding those lowest paid workers, those who are part-time, probably need this benefit more than others. And I wondered if we could look at maybe providing more support. You know, could we have even a kind of two-tiered system in this, that there was more money made available for perhaps those through financial reasons or others that they maybe feel they can't afford to enter the pension scheme, that they would have you know, a death in service benefit. Doesn't just pay for a funeral, but also maybe gives them some financial support. And I just wondered if there is any scope around that, and potentially we could say a cut-off that, you know, death in service benefit, but if you're earning over X, you wouldn't get the £5,000. But if for others, and certainly to capture those small number of employees, and I absolutely hope an even smaller number who would ever die in service, that they would maybe get, say, let's say £10,000 as an example. I'm just wondering if there is something we could look around that.
Yeah.
So we've been looking for a long time at several options and different ways of approaching it. But from a qualities perspective, we looked at keeping everything the same, so no having a two-tier approach, and we have pretty much based it around funerals. We do have other councils that only give it to those that's not in the pension fund, but we felt in our qualities press that we should include all employees. We can introduce whatever scheme that then we deem, and it's agreed by Cabinet, but this is what we felt was the best, more proportionate scheme than the previous one that we had.
Thank you, Chair. No, and thank you for that, and absolutely understand the idea behind the parity and all. But I wonder if maybe it is something that maybe we defer a decision in this today to maybe have a look at, and maybe for our members to even have a discussion on that support for those poorest members of our workforce, those who are in that short-term employment or who are in part-time roles, to make sure that we can absolutely provide for them because they're not in the pension scheme. And it's not, I don't want to delay anything this because I would hate to think anybody was going to miss out. But I just wonder if maybe some further consideration could be given into supporting those most vulnerable members of society who are our employees.
Sorry, I'll bring Jim in and Councillor in a second. But I'm just thinking if there's something, you know, I'd like to get this agreed and over the line today, but taking your point on board, Jim.
Just a question. I don't know where you have that, Amanda, but how many employees have died in service over the last 5 years?
So from 2021, it's in paragraph 7, there's been 37 deaths in service.
37?
Yes, at the time of writing this report, unfortunately, it has went up by 1 since then.
So it's 30 over 5 years, it's 40. So it's here. So could I come back then? Could I make maybe another proposal then rather than taking that away? Could we look at that then and maybe double that fee just as it is and look at taking that up to 10 right across the board, considering we've only had roughly 8 a year? That would cover, I think, Barry, your concerns around about the less well off, and got it for what it is in you.
Thanks, Leader. I mean, I think having recently been involved in my mum's funeral, because I think this is a generous offer, and I think it's in the ballpark of what it actually costs to have a funeral. And I think we maybe don't want to be losing sight of the fact that this is a good thing. You know, it's, and I take Barry's point, but I think £5,000, where before there was nothing, is a reasonable sum to cover costs of a dignified funeral.
You, Chair. So we have done a lot of benchmarking, and the average cost about £4,000 to £4,500 for a funeral. Could I suggest that if we implement, if members agree to implement this policy, concerned obviously that somebody else might lose out, but obviously I've said I would come back in a year with an update, but I could come back sooner with that, with just the details of what's happened in that and review the policy thereafter.
I think that would be helpful, just, and if we want to kind of increase it then, or then we can consider it at that time, but I think it's important to get it over the line today. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. No, I agree. I think when I think deferring it probably would be the wrong decision. I do want to make sure that we've got this support in place as soon as possible. However, I do want to make sure that it isn't just the cost for a funeral for those who are not in the pension scheme. Is to make sure for their families going forward at least something there. And I get they have the option to join the pension scheme, but for I'm sure a huge number of reasons, and mainly financial reasons, people are not doing that. I'm glad it is a very small number of our workforce who are not joining it, but I do think the potential's there, and maybe we do introduce it as today and ask you to come back within maybe 6 months to see, could we look at that age profile or look at the kind of workforce profile with a means to increasing that maybe for those who are not in the pension scheme specifically, but also maybe consider Councillor McMahon's point about increasing it further. Thanks.
Okay, I think that's a reasonable suggestion. I think we go with 6 months review, and we can look at it then. Okay, with that change, can we agree the recommendations? Okay, I now have to move exclusion of press and public and ensure that the